Hello. On today's Dr. Dean Show, we have a very special guest talking to us about all things regarding public schools in Texas and how parents can navigate everything from an ARD meeting all the way to 504 meetings. We're looking forward to hearing from her.
Dr. Dean Becklock has been working as a counselor with students, families, kids, and teens for over 40 years. As the founder of the Becklock Behavioral Health Center, Dr. Dean focuses on children and families that need a little extra help via counseling. Each week with Dr. Elizabeth Zach, we discuss all things family related to help people create the positive family they want to build. Welcome to the Dr. Dean Show.
Our special guest today is Robin Fishman. She's a counselor for Brentfield Elementary School.
Yep.
And that is in the Richardson School District. Robin also works as a counselor and a therapist for us at Becklock Behavioral Health Center. We're so privileged to have Robin here today. She has a vast amount of experience and knowledge, and we're so glad to have you here today, Robin. And would love to hear anything that you have to share, because you've been at it
for a long time.
Long.
Oh, no, not long at all. No, I started when I was 10.
Robin, how long have you been working as a school counselor? And
yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about your role as a school counselor?
I have been working as a school counselor. This is my 25th year. Holy cow.
Wow.
How's that 28 total in education, 25 years as a school counselor, 8 years in Irving, and then this 20 years, I'm celebrating my 20th year in Richardson ISD, which has been an incredible school district. I'm so blessed to be a part of such an amazing team of counselors and staff, and I work at incredible, incredible school. I just feel so fortunate to be there. School counseling, to be perfectly honest, is really one of the best jobs in the building. I know teachers love their work, and so do all the other support staff, but school counseling is really the best job in the building. We get to work with kids. In order
to be a school counselor, you had to do some teaching too.
Yes.
And did you enjoy that as well?
I did. I did. I loved it. But I knew, like, I had my master's degree before I started teaching, and I really just needed to figure out how to get in the schools, because I figured, you know what, if they show up every day, then I have work to do. So I actually was in a behavior unit for my first 3 years. And then right at the end of my first 3 years, at the time, had to teach for 3 years. And
a behavior unit would be kids who are having some behavioral issues. Yeah. Is that right?
Yes. And at the time, I was in Irving ISD, and at the time, it was not a neighborhood program. It was kids were bussed in from all over the district for our elementary behavioral unit. So we had all kids from all over, and no day was ever the same. But I guess no day is ever the same as a school counselor anyway. So I love that. And I just feel so fortunate that I get to hang out with kids all day, and help kids. And yes, there are definitely other parts of our job, but I relish in the opportunity to talk to kids all the time and help them and support them. And, the thing that makes school counseling amazing, and Dr. Dean, you know this because you are a former school counselor, always love kids, but the best part is that we have the entire system right in our hands, right? We have the kid, of course, we have the teacher, we have the other staff members that are working with that student, and we have the friends, which is huge. We get to watch them and the social dynamic. And then, of course, we get to work with their parents.
Absolutely, yeah.
So it is full throttle. Yeah. That's what makes our job so amazing.
And I think, just reflecting on what you just said, I think part of the reason I loved being a teacher is I loved working with kids. Now, they always put me with the older ones, 5th and 6th and 7th and 8th, but I loved working with kids, and I think that's you too. You enjoy kids, and you can tell. You can just tell that you do.
Thank you.
And as a school counselor, you enjoy working with the kids too. And then, like I said, Robin works for us doing private practice counseling as well, and we are just so fortunate and blessed to have you.
Guess what? This is October is my 4-year anniversary of working at Becklock.
Wow.
So it does fly. It went fast. I saw an opening with all things happening with COVID. Like, I need to be doing something in addition with an opportunity to support kids and Dr. Becklock and I had talked about it once before, and I just kind of let it lie dormant, and it just felt like the right time.
And I did that too. I worked as a school counselor at Prestonwood. Maybe I shouldn't say that, but just right down from
down the street,
just right down the road from where you are at, and loved it. And then began working on the side privately too, and
yeah, it's
really
very fulfilling. It's very fulfilling.
Yeah.
I feel like it's an interesting shift, and it gives me a lot of perspective on the school counselor side. I feel like I really have an opportunity to help my private clients because I understand the language of school. I understand what a day in the life of a student is, the stress, all those little nuances that are school. So I feel like I have the opportunity to provide that with my, working with my private students. And I also think that I understand as a private therapist how, the questions to ask and to help understand what's happening and to be a resource to parents. So I'm finding that work great.
One of my favorite authors wrote a book called Playground Politics. And I always thought they're walking into a political minefield every day, like all adults are.
They are.
However, none of them have social skills.
100%.
So kids will say things to each other that, we probably wouldn't as adults. Probably, maybe. But, they are in a really interesting situation.
They really are. And I think, sometimes even with adults, I'm like, they just took their ball and left the playground. Sometimes adults will do that. They just take their ball and they leave the field. I think, gosh, we could talk a long time about that because there's so much going on with young people, and things are very different than they were when I was growing up, when you guys were growing up, even when our 35, 40-year-old parents today were growing up. School is very different.
Yeah.
And the politics of school, I love that. The politics of school are really different, and kids and parents really need to have lots of good conversations at home about the things to talk about at school and the things to just go ahead and leave at home.
Yeah.
Because it can be hot water for kids, and they don't even realize it because it's conversation happening outside of school that then comes into school. And so that's interesting.
When my kids were in junior high and high school, and you guys know because you've had junior high and high school kids, but they would bring that kind of environment that they're at into our home and just be kind of, I hope this is okay to say, mouthy, kind of mean, kind of rude. And so we would have a little conversation every now and then and say, I know you have to deal with that at school and you're always dealing with it, but let's not bring that into our home.
Right.
Absolutely. So,
well, I'm thrilled that you're here. I think I feel so fortunate that we're colleagues, but also I get to call you a friend. So I think you're amazing. I think you do amazing work. And I know that the kids at Brentfield, but also your private clients are so blessed because you're just so skilled. So I'm so excited to talk to you about some of these things. We are questioned as on the private side of things. Parents don't know where to start if their kids are struggling. If they are struggling with social issues, if their kids are struggling with social issues, if they're struggling with emotional issues, if they have concerns about possible learning differences. And so I would love if you can provide a little bit of education for us on what a parent can do.
Well, the first thing a parent can do really is talk to their classroom teacher, ask a lot of questions about what they're seeing, how they think their child's performing, really sit at home and read with them, listen to the way that they read, listen to their voice, listen to their reading rate and accuracy, all of those things that they're concerned about, reading issues. I know this is a time where there's not a ton of homework coming home, but I say, like, if your student is coming home with work in their Friday folder, if you will, look at that work, really look at the corrections that are being made, pay attention. Sometimes kids struggle because they make careless mistakes, and sometimes kids struggle because they truly don't understand the content. And I think that's important to help identify. Again, asking a lot of questions of the teacher, and really take stock in, what they're seeing on paper in terms of how they're performing. I think the next steps is really just listening to that teacher. A lot of times, like in my case, our students, are there year after year. So we're really fortunate that we really get a history with our students. But that's certainly not always the case, and most often not the case. But really just asking whether or not they think that there's more going on. And if that's the case, then talk to the teacher about what are some options that the school provides.
I think that's so important because, if the parent is showing some concern to the teacher and is having some awareness of that, more than likely the teacher has noticed it too.
Correct.
And they will verify, I see the same thing.
And I think sometimes for a parent it's hard because if you have multiple children, you might be comparing a little bit. And so I think that's why that that extra set of eyes to really give you some feedback there, comparing against 21 other kids, 23 other kids in their classroom, your kiddo is really on the average of what I'm seeing across all of my students, or they are struggling a little bit more. I think that's really helpful information. So as they're gathering information and talking to teachers and really asking those important questions, I don't think we have to rush in a sense, like if we're asking early and we're paying attention early, I don't think we have to rush to an evaluation, but it's certainly something that public schools offer and private institutions offer. So, and that's a full and individual evaluation that looks at the scope of all different things. So
I'm glad you mentioned that about private schools, because private schools now are getting into that business a little bit more. They're recommending testing now. They're recommending they will put together a plan as well, like public schools have been doing for a long time.
Absolutely, and they are required to.
Right.
Because just because they're in private school doesn't mean that a student can't have their needs met in a very specific way, which I think is amazing. Actually, I think that's a great coup for private school students and their families.
Right.
But wherever that family decides to have their evaluation done, whether it's public school or private evaluations through private agencies, that information is so valuable. It gives us a really a lot of information that we can use to support a student in school. And so we look very deeply at all of that information that's provided to us, and of course the recommendations. And when we get recommendations from evaluations, whether they're public or private, again, we run those recommendations through the teacher, through our own experiences, because not everything on the list is appropriate for that student, but we're looking at all of that information and helping to come together and think about a plan for how to support them. So.
And I'm learning, I think the language has changed, but before perhaps testing is done, is there another level of
great question.
SST, is that what it is? Or it used to be?
Response intervention.
RTI.
MTSS.
MTSS,
multi-tiered system support.
And I think SSI is through Plano. I think that's what they call it.
I think probably different districts do different things.
But really, used to be commit, I think.
Really what we're doing is, every teacher, I can't imagine any teacher not, but every teacher does everything in their power to support a kid. That's just what we do.
Right.
And it's called differentiating instruction. We differentiate based on what a student needs. And so what works for one might not work for another, and that's not just academically, it's behaviorally, it's emotionally. So sometimes it looks like, oh, we're doing more for this kid than this kid, but no, this is what this kiddo needs, this is what this kid needs. And so we are providing all kinds of supports, even prior to that conversation about assessment.
Can I just say, that's so critical for everyone to understand, even us as parents. We give according to need.
Right.
The kids are always calling parents to give according to equality.
Right.
I want the same amount of candy as she got.
Right.
And so the parents' duty and role is to say, we give according to need, not according to making sure everything's equal. We want to make sure everyone is getting what they must have and need. And so that's what you're speaking to, including academically.
Yeah, and socially, emotionally. You know, one student's going to need something different than another. And a good teacher knows how to balance that out so all of her students feel, or his students feel, like they are getting what they need.
Yeah.
And you know, it's sometimes it's hard. It's
now,
hard.
Getting to what Dr. Zach was asking, do you sometimes have a group meeting at school prior to deciding we're going to address this through testing and then maybe entering into another program?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We do something on our campus, and I know Plano does it too. All districts do it. It's basically like a staffing, if you will. We call it a kid talk. It's really either a classroom teacher or another staff member that says, hey, can we come to the table and talk about this kiddo? I want to kind of put all of our heads together to figure out how best to support this kiddo. And we'll invite our diagnostician, we'll invite, you know, if we're concerned about some social skills, we might invite our speech pathologist, who is an expert in social skills and you know, pragmatic language. We'll have administrators there, classroom teachers there. We look at all kinds of data. We pull their MAP scores. We pull, you know, if they are a student that took assessment through STAR, we'll pull that, any kind of evaluation, whether it's from a private resource or if it was done in Richardson ISD. So we're looking at all of
the
that.
heads together to talk about this child and how we can make this child successful.
Absolutely. And sometimes, you know, especially if a student is really struggling, that's something that usually a teacher will want to put together. So we organize that and get everybody around the table and try to figure out how to help.
I don't think parents realize that happens.
They don't.
Right? I don't think they realize that how much support is happening, how many heads, how many folks, you know, are really working to help the child.
Yeah, I mean, especially if they're, you know, I don't mean this in the wrong way, but especially if really they're in a critical state. If they're on fire. Then, you know, we're talking constantly. I mean, I barely can make it from one end of the hallway to the other without somebody stopping me and asking me a question about something with a student or this or that. So, and I know I'm not the only one. Obviously, teachers are doing it with each other. They're always collaborating with their teammates, with last year's teacher, with a lower grade teacher, even if it's from a different school. I mean, we're always collaborating. Hey, this kiddo doesn't understand.
We have lots of conversations
100%.
with teachers and with school counselors. With releases, of course.
From both sides.
From both sides. But
and I find that to be really helpful.
So helpful.
Because when we talk with our private, from the school side, when we talk with private, or from the private side, when we talk with school, trying to really streamline the language that we're using is so powerful to help a kiddo.
So what is 504? What is special education?
All right, let's dig in. Let's get in there.
These things, I mean, and when is it determined that we need to move in that kind of direction?
So I think, you know, again, really, whether it's families that are doing some outside evaluation or the school recommending evaluation, however that looks, when we do an evaluation, we do what's called a full and individual evaluation. Okay.
And is that at these meetings that you have about a student? Is that sometimes that point in time when you decide to do an evaluation through the school?
Well, we don't ever decide that. I mean, that's really a parent's decision. A parent is always our guiding voice. So we might talk about some options, and then maybe either that classroom teacher or maybe one of our principals and the teacher will talk with the parent, or I will talk with the parent with the teacher, or the teacher and her partner will, you know, if they're departmentalized.
So that needs to be kicked off by the parent.
Yeah, well, it's a collaboration.
Okay.
So if from our end we have some concerns, we might make that recommendation. But if a parent's like, no, that's not something, or I'm going to do that outside of school, or I'm really not ready to do, we're always going to respect where the parent is. And I think that's a cornerstone really for people to understand, is that we are very well aware that parents are our guiding voice. And so while we may have some ideas about what we think might be in the best interest of their child, it is their child, and they are really there to help us and work with us. And that's why I think trust and relationship is so powerful, because Schools a long time ago were very different, and sometimes families don't trust schools, and so it's a lot of delicate dancing in that arena. But to your question about the when and who, really, if we have that conversation internally, then of course we're going to lean into the family and ask what their feedback is and what are they thinking, and do they think that's an okay? Would they want to proceed with that? If
and
it's
testing
coming from
is simply trying to understand this child, see what their strengths, what their weaknesses are, so that we can really beef up the weaker areas and also play to the stronger ones.
For 100%, but it really is about trust, right? So our families have to know that we have their best interest and their child's best interest at heart. And if you as an adult had a bad experience somewhere along the way, or you saw students being treated a certain way because they were identified or labeled, that's a word I get all the time, labeled in some way or another, that's what they're walking in the door with. They don't want their kid labeled. And so that's something to work through with that family. And again, it's all about trust and helping them understand.
Education, helping them understand what the purpose is.
But so when we do if the school is doing it, if we do a full and individual evaluation, we will look at any area of what we call suspected disability. So if there is a suspicion that there's autism, or the family is interested in autism, or there's speech and language or academic, or dyslexia now is falling under special education. So that's a huge shift out of 504. That's like happening now. If they look at emotional disturbance, which is not my favorite terminology for a student who might be struggling with depression or anxiety or the like, or what we call OHI, which is other health impairment, which is ADHD. So,
or medical.
So two things have to be present if they are going to qualify for specialized instruction. Okay. The first thing is that there's an impairment, that there's an identified weakness that rises to the level of impairment, and that the student needs specialized instruction. So both of those things have to be present for them to meet eligibility for special education. Okay. In Section 5, so special education is a larger, more protected program where there is pull-out, push-in support that's provided by a trained professional special education teacher.
Possibly have modifications to curriculum if necessary.
Yes, that's
more rare.
More on the rarer side if a student is significantly below. I mean, special education ranges all the way from very, very low IQ specialized programs, and then all the way up to, we have kids who are gifted and talented, have dyslexia, have autism, so they can have their hands in a lot of different pots. And speech and language, like not saying their R's correctly, that's specialized instruction, right?
Instruction.
So that is a big umbrella, very protected umbrella. And then Section 504 is a little bit different. Section 504 is an anti-discrimination statute that was put in place back in the 70s. It started with an airline pilot who got fired because he broke his arm. And so that was obviously unfair and unjust. And so basically, Section 504 is really about protecting students with an impairment. So two things also have to be present in Section 504. Number one, there has to be this impairment, a diagnosis. And number two, it has to substantially limit a major life activity. And that's where it gets a little like, oh, but they're a straight A student. Oh, but everything's going well. So we kind of have to dive deeper with in a different way with Section 504, because a lot of times kids will come to school and they look like they got it all going on. But really at home, they're imploding. Right. And that's what you guys deal with and what their families deal with. And so we really have to have a lot of those conversations, because we need to bring that down a notch.
And what's very interesting here is that, there's a couple of arenas that, as you've already alluded to, fall under 504 many times, which is ADHD and dyslexia, just two common ones.
Well, dyslexia is now moving to specialized instruction. It's out of 504. Okay. It's pretty much, it's if they are receiving, and I'm just clarifying, if they are receiving dyslexia instruction services where
It
they're
goes
getting
over.
pulled out, it is special education. When they graduate that program and they're only receiving accommodations, as I see it right now, and this
They
is
go back to
all hot
504.
off the press,
Interesting.
they go back to 504 because now
That
we're
makes
only,
sense.
it does. Now we're only providing instructional accommodations
In the classroom.
in the classroom.
Now,
Correct.
and then even kids with anxiety can be in 504.
100%.
However, if any of that, I guess what you're saying, needs specialized instruction or help, that's going to be under the bigger umbrella of special education.
Correct.
Okay.
So if their behaviors, if their anxiety, depression, if it interferes to a great degree with instruction, with their instruction, then it very well could fall under specialized instruction. If they really just need some accommodations, and I don't want to minimize it, I know I'm saying if they just, there's no minimizing because it's equally as important and very, very helpful. I happen to be a very big fan of Section 504 when it's right for students. Because it could simply be that that student needs a break. Like we need to let them go take a walk, or what we call walk around the block. You know, just take a walk, go, you know, get a drink of water, go, you know, just little things. Prioritize late work. I mean, there's so many different things that a kid can have support with. That is easy peasy. It's what a classroom teacher would do anyway, but we're putting it on a document that floats amongst the adults, at least in elementary school, that really just kind of lets everybody know what this kiddo needs. It's, we say it's like it's leveling the playing field. It's just making life, you know, what they need.
Can you address one little part of this that can sometimes be confusing? And this is confusing. I mean, it really is.
It is confusing.
But-
and that's why I say talk to your educators.
But what is the difference between diagnosis and eligibility?
Ooh. Well, I'm going to take a stab at it, okay?
Good,
Because I'm not an expert
Because
at
in
the
special
language.
ed, they're wanting eligibility, correct?
Well, you can have a diagnosis, but in order to be eligible, your impairment or your diagnosis must rise to the level of needing specialized instruction. Okay, so that's the key.
That's the difference.
That's the difference. So with special education, you're rising to the level of needing specialized instruction. So if you have a kiddo who's very anxious and we really need to get in there and teach skills and they need pull-out support for whatever social skills or, you know, whatever it is that they need, if it's an academic issue, providing that support, either pull out, push in, really doing a lot more push in, to be very honest with you, than pull out. But that's needing specialized instruction. If the student does not need specialized instruction and they have an impairment and it substantially limits a major life activity, then they would receive their support services through Section 504.
Okay.
Does that help?
It helps.
It does. It is confusing, I think, for families. I know with my boys, one with dysgraphia and ADHD and the other with dyslexia, which it is, I did not realize that
Brand
now it's
new.
going under.
Hot off the press.
Yeah, very interesting. I think that would
But
have
makes
been.
sense.
It does make
It makes sense. They are being pulled out, you know, on a license cycle every day.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And I loved, you know, early on when I was learning how to navigate all these things, I love the language that you used, you know, that the support services that they're receiving is just to level the playing field.
It's exactly what it is.
You know, and
Just
it's
making
not to make it
equitable.
easier. It's not to you know, that they're going to do better on test or, you know,
100%.
it's just to level the playing field.
That's
And I
right.
think that's so important.
And I think early on, and you know, obviously we've been doing Section 504 for a very long time. Early on, like people are like, but you know, my kid could be doing better. But that's not what Section 504
No.
is. It's about making equal access.
Yep.
Everybody should get equal access.
Yep.
Whether they do better or however they do,
They need extra time.
Right, whatever
if
that
they
is.
need whatever it might be.
That's
Yep.
right. But it's equal access to the curriculum and to all that school has to offer.
Well, maybe we can shift a little bit and talk more about the social and emotional supports that you can provide. Just as a school counselor, I know in our practice we're seeing so much anxiety.
So much anxiety.
Starting, you know, at such a young age. And many kids struggling with school refusal, struggling with, you know, separation anxiety. And I know that there's just wonderful school counselors and teachers that are doing so many things to support these students. So maybe you could talk a little bit about how you navigate those things.
They are very challenging, and it's so clear that, you know, I kind of look at it from a place of, if a student could do it differently, they would. Right? So if it was easy to just walk in like every other kid just walks in and goes about their day, they would, because they don't want it either. They wish, you know, that it was easier for them too. So acknowledging kind of where they are and just understanding that this is really has to be a painful place for that student. And of course, I live by this statement, you know, when your kiddo hurts, you hurt more. And so as a parent watching your child struggle, it's like a knife and, you know, right to the soul. So, you know, I know it's so hard for families, and how do we tackle it? I mean, it's really a all hands on deck approach. You know, again, I mean, I can't think of a day that I don't walk into one of my principal's office like, okay, I just did this, what do you think? You know, we're always collaborating. You know, they're always, even though we have very different roles, even though as a school counselor, it's our job to keep students' information confidential, of course, but like day-to-day operations of supporting a kid and helping a kid, like we've all been around kids for a long time, and for us, it's so important to collaborate. So, and I'm fortunate enough, I have a partner on my campus, so we kind of work together in tandem. So if we have a kiddo that's struggling to come in or come to school, you know, we're working with that student, working with that family, trying to find the little needle in the haystack that maybe we can get a handle on so that we can help that student. And sometimes it's just deregulation from coming from home and into this stressful environment, and, you know, giving them a few minutes to deregulate. Sometimes it's just literally crossing the threshold. And once they're in school, I cannot tell you how many kids get on the other side of the hallway after mommy's gone, or daddy, or whomever is dropping them off, guardian is dropping them off, whoever that is. They get around the corner and it's like their shoulders release, they're done, and they mosey on about their day. Walk to class, and they're okay. But it's that let go moment, and you know, I think my partner and I, we hang out at kindergarten for the first like 3 weeks of school. You know, for kinder and first, you know, we're kind of there. You know, when it's an extended break, we'll kind of hang out down there. We kind of just know that it's a hard time, but we have older kids. I mean, I've had a lot of older kids over the course of my time where I'm walking out to the car every morning and having them come in, or, you know, I think the bottom line is good school professionals are willing to do whatever it takes to help a kiddo feel safe and comfortable. And
I think that having listened to you today, everyone's going to want to get their kid in Brentfield. I'm sorry.
But let me just tell you, I'm very fortunate because not only do I get to work with both of you, and I feel so blessed to be able to do that, and I also get to go to work every day at school. I also serve as a board member on the Lone Star State School Counselor Association, that's a mouthful, board, as the chair of ethics. But why I'm sharing that with you is I work with so many passionate school counselors, and they share how their school districts, whether they're rural small school districts that, you know, they have one counselor and maybe that counselor is even traveling between buildings. I mean, people who choose this job, any of us in school, no matter what our role is, it's because we love kids. And so there are great school counselors all over Texas. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable.
I was one of those. Really
yes, you are.
great.
It's in your heart, right? I will always be a school counselor, no matter what I do.
So you also work with us in private practice. And what kinds of issues have you dealt with? And also, are there any particular areas that you have a special interest in?
Okay, so what have I dealt with in private? A lot of anxiety, like both of you. A lot of social stuff. Kids struggling to read social cues and conflict with peers and things like that. I work a lot with that. Anger. Just changing families, or some of my clients have different, you know, evolving families or whatever's happening in their family of origin. So some of that stuff as well. I love that work. I really do. I feel so incredibly fortunate to be able to work with those students. But I think what I'm learning is it really, and I think you will agree. I mean, it just takes time. I think sometimes when families come to private counseling, it's like, oh, that there's going to be a magic wand or 5 sessions, we're done, and it's just kind of not like that. And kids are a little unpredictable, and it just takes time for them to feel safe and comfortable, and then also willing to, after having an exhausting long day at school, come into our office. And while I'll say it's a very cool office with lots of cool stuff to do, sometimes it's hard to talk about their day.
Right.
You know, and that's, you know, we have a short amount of time to get to the meat and potatoes of our work, but I'm learning all the time new tools and tricks to kind of get there faster. But it's a craft, and
I agree.
I'm working hard to learn, and I have a lot more to learn, but I enjoy it.
And I think that is, you know, to have that attitude is always important, no matter how long we've done it.
Oh, I have so much to learn every day.
We are always growing. Now, do you have anything that really tugs at your heart? Let me give you an example. Prior to my divorce, I had worked with kids in divorce and families and dealt with all of that. But when I got to walk through divorce land for the first time, oh my word. Now I'm seeing it from a new perspective, a different perspective. And I suddenly had much more of a heart. You know, the heart.
Yeah.
A heart for kids walking through divorce land, moms walking through divorce land, dads walking through divorce land. And divorce land to me is not only the process of going through a divorce, but post-divorce too. We're in divorce land. And
very different than Barbie land.
Yeah. It became quite more of a heart thing. Is there anything that tugs at your heart?
100%. So similar to you in the sense that from my own background, as an elementary school student, I went to public school. I had some vision issues. I had big bottle cap glasses, a big old patch on my eye, and I could not read. And I have a picture posted in my school office, and it's a newspaper clipping saying helping Robin read. And I was getting intervention at public school, but didn't even know why. There was no real name. Dyslexia was really only coined in the 70s. And so I struggled a lot as a student. I really didn't feel like I had advocates, except for my parents, thank you, Mom and Dad, because I just felt like there was red ink all over my paper. Nobody really wanted to help. I didn't feel like the teacher I felt like she was bothered by me. And so I struggled a lot. My parents finally put me in private school, had me tested. And then eventually I went back to public school. I really think a lot of that defined who I am. And I really believed, and I still believe, like, I want to help kids. I want them to feel like they are enough, they are good, they can work towards something. And just because there's something that is difficult for you doesn't mean it defines you.
Right.
So for me, I feel like that's a big, powerful pull to why I chose to practice in schools.
And why you are so good. You know?
I mean, I can still see myself crying over my textbooks and like falling asleep because I couldn't read them, and plus my eyes were tired because one's blind, and so I'd hear my dad coming down the hallway, and I'd wake up and like I had no idea what I just read, and I'd have a test or something. So
when you said red marks, I remember reading somewhere someone said, "My paper looks like it bled to death."
Right, that's what mine looked like. You know, back in the day, the teachers had a pen, one side was blue and one side was red. And when she'd flip it to the red side, I knew it was my paper. And I was like, oh, Lord. And, I just didn't spell.
I didn't know.
And I didn't know. But let me tell you something. I can spell beautifully, and I can read and write, and I read books all the time. And that's what I share with my students who have dyslexia. Like, when you have the intervention and you have an opportunity to improve, and learn and grow, then the world is your oyster, no matter what your impairment is,
Well, we're just about out of time. Thank you so much. I mean, I think everyone's going to want to come see you at our clinic, and they're going to be moving to Brentfield. So, sorry. Now, just as a final little thing, a little tidbit, what can moms and dads maybe do or have in their head or have in their heart that can help their kids this school year? What would be something that you could say would be a value for moms and dads? Because we're talking about moms and dads and families and kids, and they're, like you said, they're sons and daughters, and they adore them and love them. Is there something that you would suggest to help their school year be something that is positive and growth enhancing for their kid?
I love that. And I know I probably don't have enough time to fully answer this question, so I'm going to give it my best try fast.
Yeah, in one word.
Oh no, I don't have that. I can't do that. I really feel like parents, again, going back to, I know that families hurt when their kids hurt. And sometimes we get real reactive, like we want to fix, we want to solve. And I just feel like it's so powerful if we focus on where the lesson is. What can my kid learn from this, regardless of what is happening with any other kid or what wasn't fair or how it went. And I understand that. Like, I'm a parent of 2 boys, you know, and I get that. My kids are not perfect. And but I really feel like it's powerful to have deep, important conversations with your kids. Really have those awkward conversations. It's okay. I know it's uncomfortable, but please try to have those hard conversations, awkward. Ask the questions. Nothing you're going to ask is going to plant a seed. And then pay attention. If they're asking for information, then give it. And, you know, you don't have to give extra if you feel like the topic is like a little bit of a sensitive one. Just give them what you think they need, but definitely keep that door open. One of the things I think I have done successfully as a parent is my kids really know that they can talk to me about anything. And they choose, whether they choose to or not, you know, but I really always say there's nothing you're going to tell me that I haven't heard before, or that, you know, I can't handle. Now, that doesn't mean I might not go in my closet and scream at the top of my lungs. Or cry. And it's definitely been done before, but I really try to hold the line. Like, I want you to know you can come to me. And I just think that, you know, as families have more exposure to technology, and again, we could go forever. As families have more exposure to more things, or students do, it's really important to have boundaries. I know your kid is good when they're in 5th grade or 4th grade, and they would never do wrong, but really having those boundaries early on so that when you have to put rules in place, it's not too far gone where they think that you're now just being mean. No, if you always have the rules in place, then you can back off when you need to, when they're 18 or 19. But really just things, or 28, just things that, you know, seem simple, but just, you know, talk to adults.
Yes.
That's great.
Thank you. We are so privileged, as I said before, to have Robin with us today and to really kind of learn from her wisdom. If you want more information about our site, please go to www.drbeckkloff.com, drbekloff.com, and you can find more information about our services there, and even maybe sign up with Robin.
Thank you guys. Thank you guys both so much. I feel so lucky to get to work with you guys every day.